Eleanor Roosevelt often said that disappointments were inevitable, but character was what made a person keep striving. Her own life proved that truth again and again. She was born Anna Eleanor Roosevelt on October 11, 1884 in New York City, the daughter of Elliot Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's younger brother, and Anna Hall Roosevelt, a woman celebrated for her beauty who never believed her daughter shared it. She called Eleanor Granny, teased her about her looks, and taught her early to hide her feelings. Her father, charming but haunted by alcoholism, disappeared for days and returned trembling and broken. Even as a toddler, Eleanor sat beside her mother for hours reading aloud during her mother's migraines, already playing the role of caretaker at 4 years old. Tragedy came quickly. In 1892, her mother died of diphtheria at just 29. Eleanor, 8 years old, remembered the soft goodbye. Months later, her little brother Elliot Jr. died of scarlet fever. She blamed herself and carried the guilt in silence for the rest of her life. The next year, her father, fragile and lost, jumped from a window. He died after a seizure the following day. The public explanation was heart disease, but Eleanor knew better. Before turning 11, she had buried both parents and a brother. Childhood ended before she even understood what it was. She and her surviving brother Hall went to live with their strict grandmother, Mary Livingston Ludlow, in Tivoli, New York. The house was large yet cold. Eleanor wore braces to straighten her back and clothes that made her feel more awkward. Laughter was discouraged. She described herself as a solemn child who felt like an old woman trapped in a young girl's body. Still, the household gave her a sort of structured safety: food, shelter, and order, something she had not known in years. Everything changed in 1899 when she was sent to Allenswood, a girls' school in England. The headmistress, Marie Sylvester, became the first person who truly understood her. Marie challenged her to think boldly, feel deeply, and observe the world without fear. They traveled through factories, poor neighborhoods, and galleries. Eleanor learned French, broadened her worldview, and grew into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman. Marie's influence became a lifelong anchor, and when she died in 1905, Eleanor kept her letters forever. Returning to New York in 1902, Eleanor found society life suffocating. While others danced and gossiped, she slipped away to volunteer on the Lower East Side, teaching immigrant children who worked without shoes and lived in overcrowded tenements. She felt more alive in those dim rooms than in any ballroom. Yet being Theodore Roosevelt's niece required public appearances she hated. Her formal White House debut in 1902, alongside her glamorous cousin Alice, felt like a trap. In 1905, she married Franklin Delano Roosevelt at her grandmother's home, with President Theodore Roosevelt walking her down the aisle. Their union joined two powerful families but immediately came with a price. Franklin's mother, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, moved into a townhouse connected to their home by a sliding door. She crossed into their private lives constantly and claimed more authority over the children than Eleanor ever could. It wounded her deeply. In 1916, Eleanor discovered letters revealing Franklin's affair with her own social secretary Lucy Mercer. The betrayal devastated her. She offered a divorce, but Franklin refused under pressure from his advisors and his mother. The relationship with Lucy ended publicly, but Eleanor's marriage became a political partnership rather than a romantic one. Loss struck again in 1909 when her infant son Franklin Jr. died of influenza. The grief nearly crushed her, reviving memories of every family loss she had endured. During World War I, she volunteered with the Red Cross and drove ambulances near the front lines in France. She loaded wounded soldiers, some burned beyond recognition, many barely older than children. One 17-year-old died in her arms clutching a picture of his sister. The sounds of explosions, the smell of blood and metal, and the faces of the dying stayed with her forever, shaping her fierce lifelong hatred of war. After the war, she threw herself into activism. She fought to help newly enfranchised women vote without fear, organizing night classes, legal aid, and safe spaces in immigrant neighborhoods. She taught at the Todhunter School, pushing students to confront issues like child labor and poverty. At settlement houses, she smuggled in food and medicine for families too poor or too frightened to seek help. Her mother-in-law dismissed it as slumming. Eleanor ignored her. In 1926, she formed a deep connection with journalist Lorena Hickok, whom she called Hick. Their thousands of letters revealed longing, comfort, loneliness, and an emotional intimacy Eleanor rarely showed anyone else. These letters would later reveal a more vulnerable side of her, someone longing to be understood after years of silence and loss. Eleanor's activism intensified as her influence grew. Her writing about coal miners suffering from black lung helped push safety reforms. Her My Day newspaper column reached millions, telling stories of maids supporting families, workers struggling to survive, and families abandoned by the system. She donated her salary entirely to charity. When Franklin ran for governor in 1928, Eleanor made 150 campaign stops, speaking openly about domestic violence, poverty, and inequality. Her honesty startled some, inspired many, and helped women see themselves in politics. She stood at the forefront of labor reform, testifying before Congress about 12-year-olds working 16-hour shifts in mills. Her words helped pass the Fair Labor Standards Act, ending child labor and establishing a minimum wage. She championed artists during the Great Depression, pushed for humane living conditions in places like Arthurdale, and held women-only press conferences to force newspapers to hire female reporters. As First Lady, she became a relentless advocate for marginalized people. She visited munitions factories where women suffered miscarriages from toxic dust and demanded safer conditions. She danced with black soldiers at segregated bases, defying racist norms. She visited Japanese American internment camps and called them inhumane. She fought for women veterans to receive GI Bill benefits. She never slowed. In 1945, President Truman appointed her U.S. delegate to the new United Nations. There she chaired the Human Rights Commission and played a central role in creating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She argued that rights meant nothing without food, shelter, medical care, and dignity. She brought photos of starving children to negotiations so delegates could not ignore human suffering. Her persistence ensured equal rights for men and women in the final document. On December 10, 1948, the declaration passed with no votes against it, an achievement widely credited to her steady leadership. She kept traveling, advocating, and challenging injustice well into her 70s. She supported civil rights cases that led to Brown v. Board of Education. She fought McCarthyism, defending blacklisted writers and artists. She marched after racist violence, smuggled money to South African activists resisting apartheid, and confronted Soviet leaders about repression. Even when cancer weakened her body, she continued writing about Hiroshima, nuclear danger, and the responsibility nations had to humanity.